Hello, Unapologetic Tribe. And for all of you guys, I want to wish you guys a Merry, Merry Christmas. I hope you guys had a fantastic Christmas holiday. So we just finished our Christmas holidays. We met up with family, socially distanced, of course. We have quarantined ourselves. And today, I can't believe it. I really just can't believe the simple fact that in a few days, it's going to be New Year's. And wow, what a year this has been. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but personally, I just can't wait for 2020 to be over. And and when this year started, I had this, belief when 2020 started, it was going to be a year of unprecedented clarity, coming from the idea that it's 2020 vision, right? And I even recall what my inspirational post was on the last day of 2019, where I said that this was going to be a year where we were all going to have the absolute clarity of vision. And then 2020 happened, coronavirus happened, and we all know what happened in the end, right? And today, I wanted to share with you what were some of the lessons, nonetheless, that 2020 and this pandemic brought about. Because let's face it, as sucky as this year was, there were also a lot of powerful lessons that it taught us. And I wanted to just share a couple of things that I learned from this pandemic. And let's start off first with what happened when Corona came marching into town. I remember the day when this pandemic started. So I had just flown in from the Philippines. I just spent a week in the Philippines for vacation, a quick vacation. I flew back, and as I was flying back, there was already word coming out that this coronavirus was something that we had to take seriously. So it was starting to spread all over the world. In fact, in my flight returning from the Philippines, passing through Korea, I started to notice people wearing face masks in the flight, right? And of course, I never imagined that it would reach this level. Flew back, March happened, I was on the road, I was super excited because March was going to be a fantastic month for me as a speaker, where every single day in March I had a speaking booking, and I was so happy because I was going to travel all over the United States. I had speaking gigs lined up one after the other. Then mid-March, the news came in that all of my speaking gigs were going to be canceled because we started to do the lockdown. We were flown home immediately, and suddenly my calendar, which was supposed to be jam-packed, was suddenly erased. And I don't know about you guys. Did you guys encounter the same thing where you had fantastic plans, you were getting into the groove of things, your year was starting to shape up, and all of a sudden this pandemic came and it's essentially screwed up every single plan that you may have? That happened to me. I flew home, and suddenly I was faced with this great uncertainty. What the hell am I going to do now, right? Because if I don't speak, if I don't have speaking gigs, I'm not going to get paid. As speakers, that's our life. We speak, we get paid, right? And as a starting speaker here, this was catastrophic for me because I just moved to the United States. I was just getting on my feet as a speaker when all of a sudden, all of that came tumbling down. And maybe you guys have encountered the same feeling at the beginning of this year. But you know what? One of the things that I discovered was that there were opportunities available out there. I had to immediately pivot from doing live talks, which I love, into doing a lot of virtual talks. I had to learn how to do a Zoom talk, for example. Because before, I was so comfortable speaking in front of a crowd. Right now, I had to learn all this technology. I had to learn how to create Zoom talks. I had to learn how to deliver talks in front of a camera. And you know what? Suddenly, I was starting to get bookings, and the bookings started to come in. And little by little, I got on my feet. And you know what was amazing? What was amazing was that the summer this year was probably my busiest as a speaker. Because before, there were moments where I'd only have one speaking gig in a day because I had to fly in from one city to another, and the time traveling, you can't really do more than one talk. But because everything was done at home, I was giving talks, I was giving seminars, I was giving webinars at home. You could do 3 or 4 in a day. And it turned out that this year turned out to be one of the most profitable and lucrative years I had as a speaker, which again brings me back to one of the most important lessons, one of the first lessons that I picked up from this coronavirus pandemic, which is crisis will always lead to creativity. Crisis is going to lead to creativity. And that's true. The one thing that we discover whenever we're backed into a corner, whenever we're put into a situation that we are not comfortable with, something that is totally unexpected from us, we learn to be creative. We learn to survive. I had no choice. I either had to batten down the hatches, learn something new, learn new skills, or I wasn't going to survive. And that for me was one of the biggest lessons that I picked up from 2020. The idea that every crisis is an opportunity for you to learn. It's an opportunity for each and every one of us to learn. And it warms my heart to see so many people out there learning new things. E-learning shot up. And again, that's also one of the reasons why I got busy, because I was filled up with doing a lot of e-learning courses. I was helping people pivot into new ways of doing things. And that's one of the biggest lessons that we picked up. The idea that if when push comes to shove, we just have to invest in ourselves, learn new skills, because every crisis will bring with it an opportunity. Every crisis is an opportunity to be creative. And for us, that's what 2020 did. For a lot of people, 2020 was a year where they learned how to cook. I learned how to cook in 2020. A lot of people enrolled in improv comedy classes. A lot of my friends enrolled in online improv comedy classes. So many of my friends studied social media, studied TikTok marketing, studied all sorts of skills online. It became an opportunity for us to be creative. When we're faced with a crisis, we can either slip down in a corner, cry, bemoan the fact that we're in a freaking crisis, or we can try to figure out what is a good solution to get out of that crisis. For me, the thing I had to learn just to get out of this crisis was I had to learn how to transform from being an on-stage speaker to being an online speaker. That was the first lesson, So we do have a message here from JC Pulan. So JC Pulan says, hello, Francis, looking good. Thank you very much, JC. I miss you very much. I hope you're doing well as well. Okay. So, this pandemic, it continued. And for those of you who know me, one of the things that you're going to know about me is that I love to travel, right? I love exploring. I love buying all sorts of weird stuff. I love buying technology, right? And during this pandemic, because of the fact that we couldn't travel, suddenly every single trip I had planned got erased. Goodbye. I had no trip. From starting 2020 with a calendar full of travels. I was going to go to states I had never gone to. I was going to go to countries I had never been to. Suddenly, boom. I had no choice. All of those things that I love doing, gone. I couldn't travel. I couldn't explore. So many things that we loved, simple human connections, simply gathering together as friends. Couldn't do that anymore. But I've also discovered one thing, that when all of these things were taken away from me, it opened my eyes to what was essential. And that brings me to the second important lesson for 2020. My second important lesson was that when we strip away the superfluous, it's a painful process. But when all of that superfluity is taken away, we discover what is essential for us. And embracing the essential, that's what's fulfilling. Taking away everything that I thought was essential in my life, it freed me up to rediscover things that were simply there but you took for granted. I learned to savor more my relationships because when we were disconnected from our relationships, we realized how important they were. The things that we used to take for granted, saying hi, hello, hugging somebody, these were things that we took for granted in the past. But now we realized how important they were. What else? I discovered the importance of health, both mental and physical health. In my mad rush to fulfill my purpose, to fulfill my mission, I had seriously neglected my health. I neglected my physical health. I neglected my mental health, and I realized that these were things that were valuable. Stripping the superfluous is painful. I'll give you that. Losing the ability to travel, losing the ability to fly, that was very painful. But it allowed me to discover what was essential. Maybe the same is true for you guys out there. What were the essential things, the most basic things that we used to take for granted, but now we realize are so important? Many of us have discovered that. For a lot of us, it's really rediscovering the importance of connection, the importance of family, the importance of a simple thing as health. And many of the things that we used to pursue, like wealth, fame, fortune, at the end of the day, all of that, it just goes down to, are you healthy or not? So that is one of the biggest lessons of this pandemic. One of the biggest lessons it has taught us is really the importance of what is essential, of rediscovering the essential, the thing that is most important for us. And my question for you guys, if you're watching this right now, type it in the chat box. What do you think was the most essential things that you discovered in 2020? I discovered family, relationships, and health. Those were some of the most important things. Rest, I rediscovered the importance of rest. How about you guys? I want to find out from you. Type in the chat box if you're watching this right now, what were some of the essential things that you picked up in 2020? Because, again, we were stripped of many things. Our lives were essentially Marie Kondoed. We were forced into a minimalism life stage. But that minimalism actually, in the end, sparked so much joy for many of us. So what is that? So we have a couple of comments here. So Marvin Agustin said 2020 was full of learning. And oops, it's still 2020. So there you go. So 2020 was really a year of learning. And it still is. I wouldn't be surprised if in the next couple of days, we still pick up some more additional lessons. Okay? Now, the third lesson that I wanted to share with you guys is that, when this pandemic started, honestly, many of my ambitious goals, my unapologetic goals, were taken away, right? For 2020. And it was replaced with far more modest goals. And the one thing I discovered is that there were moments that I wasn't the most excited person for the year. I was just okay. I was just okay. Nothing great. Or there were also moments when I wasn't okay. And I'll be honest, I'll admit this to you guys, my unapologetic friends out there. There were moments that I wasn't okay. But you know what? That in itself was also a lesson. The idea is in 2020, maybe we're too harsh on ourselves. We think that, okay, we have to achieve amazing, great feats for 2020. But for many of us, 2020 was essentially like a holding pattern of a plane. You're not going anywhere. You were just circling around. You were just on standby. But the reality is that if you're just okay, it's okay. And if you're not okay, it's okay too. 2020 taught us a very important and valuable lesson, and that's compassion. But more importantly, it is compassion to ourselves as well. Because for many of us, maybe we have not been compassionate with ourselves. We've been too harsh on ourselves. We've treated ourselves badly, right? And maybe this is the year where we need to rediscover that and tell ourselves that, you know what? If all you achieved this year was to just survive, then that's enough. You don't need to compare yourself to other people who were superstars, who made big leaps in 2020, who were super successful in the middle of a pandemic. You don't need to. If you were just okay in 2020, that's perfectly okay. And you know what? If you were not okay in 2020, if you suffered through mental health issues, physical issues, sadness, loneliness, depression, it's also okay. But I'm also here to tell you that if you're not okay, seek help, find help. Because the reality is, we are never alone. We don't have to face these challenges and these difficulties alone. You've got your family, you've got your friends. Help is available. Can I share with you something very personal? You know, when this pandemic reached its full explosion last summer, I was in such a bad mental state. Like, I was entering into a mental state where it was a very dark. I was going into a dark place, right? And I really felt grasping for straws. And I realized that, you know what? I had to admit to myself that at that moment I definitely wasn't okay. So I sought the help of a therapist. I hired a professional to really journey with me through this, to really help process what I was going through. And you know what? It helped a lot. And I'm also here to tell you guys that don't ever be afraid to ask for help. Help is always available to you guys. Seek it out. You are not weak. You're not a lesser human being simply because you asked for help. No, you've got to simply reach out, look for the help that you need, because it's available for you. And that's one of the things that I had to pick up and I had to learn this year. The idea that really, if you're not okay, it's okay. Seek help. Okay. So we do have a couple of comments here. So from Annika. Annika says the biggest lesson: be more flexible to change and embrace the change. The biggest person who can encourage you is yourself. Thank you very much for this powerful lesson, Annika. And I'd like to hear from the other viewers right now. What were some of the most important lessons that you picked up from 2020? And now Annika also continued saying that the most essential is health and relationship with people, mostly my family. And a lot of people, that were the essential things that they discovered during this pandemic. The idea that health and relationships are key. And the idea, and Annika's last comment, we are never alone. We are all in the same boat. And truly, that's, again, one of the most important lessons of this particular pandemic. So get some help. You're never alone. And speaking of the idea that you're never alone, a term that became super famous right now during this pandemic is the term to socially distance, right? This is the idea of keeping 6 feet apart from one another. But there's an important truth that I want to make sure that all of us understands clearly. And this truth is this: that socially distanced doesn't mean socially disconnected. Part of not being alone is to find a supportive community who will journey with you through the good times and, most importantly, through the bad times as well. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I put up this unapologetic group, the Unapologetics, this tribe that you guys belong to, right? This is our supportive community. This is a safe space for you guys to share what your dreams are, to share what your worries are, and to seek for help. Because there are people in this group who are more than willing to help. You've just got to reach out to it. I remember In Harry Potter, one of my favorite scenes there was a scene where Harry Potter's professor was telling him that Hogwarts is a place where help is available if you just ask for it. And my question is, have we asked for help? What is the help that we need? We've got to look for that. But part of that is really finding a supportive community. For a lot of people, their supportive community is a church. For a lot of people, their supportive community is their family. For a lot of people, their supportive community are groups like this. I sincerely hope that this group becomes your supportive community as well. So, those are my 3 lessons for 2020. What I'd like to find out from you now is, what are your lessons in 2020? What was the biggest lessons that 2020 taught you? Just to recap, so what were the 3 lessons that we picked up? The very first lesson is that crisis ultimately leads to creativity. That whenever we are backed into a corner, whenever we're put into a moment when we're challenged, it will unlock creative energy in us. It will allow us to discover new ways of doing things. That's the first lesson that I picked up during this pandemic. The second one is that when you strip the superfluous, the process is painful, but embracing the essential is ultimately fulfilling. Once we get rid of all of this baggage, this loose baggage has been holding us down, these superfluous things that we thought were essential, were necessary in our lives, but when we look back into it, we realize they're not that important. When we strip that out and we embrace the essential, ultimately the essential is what is fulfilling. It's the type of joy that lasts a long time. It's not short-term joy, it's long-term joy. Find your essential. I don't know about you guys, but one of the most inspiring movies I saw recently was about death. I don't know if you guys seen the movie of Pixar called Soul? And in this movie, it talks about finding your essential, finding your spark. What is the spark? What is the essential thing that you are called to discover? Find that essential and embrace it. That's the second lesson. The third lesson is simply this: if you're not okay, it's okay. If you're just okay, it's okay. 2020 taught me to be more kind, to be more compassionate towards myself. And I'd like to invite you guys to do the same thing, to be more compassionate to yourself. Because let's face it, this was not an easy year. This was definitely not an easy year. And if you survive this year just by the skin of your teeth, that's okay. Give yourself a pat in the back, give yourself a hug, because you did wonderfully. The fact that you survived, that's all that matters right now. There will be time to rise up. There will be time to pick ourselves up. But for today, let's just savor the fact and be grateful for the reality that we've survived. And the last part is, if you're not okay, it's okay. Please get help, because really, socially distance doesn't mean socially disconnected. Find your supportive community, find your tribe, find your safety group. A group where you can be vulnerable, a group where you can open up, a group where you can grow. I hope that the Unapologetic group is that group for you. And this year, for 2021, we've got so many things lined up for you guys. So many things that we want to share with you to help unlock breakthroughs in your life. Whatever state you're in, whether you are picking yourself up from 2020, whether you're poised to launch yourself into a height that you've never dreamt of before, we've got that for you here. Find your community, and hope this group becomes your group as well. So before we end, I want to invite you guys who are watching this right now, let's be very vocal about what is it that we want to achieve. And the way for us to be vocal about that is to reflect and try to learn, what has 2020 taught us. So my 1 minute to do it for you guys is, in the chat box of this video, whether you're watching it live right now or whether you're watching the replay later on, in this video, I want you to type in, what were the most important lessons, the 3 important lessons that 2020 picked. the 2020 gave you. I'd love to learn. I'd love to see what lessons 2020 taught you guys. Just like I shared with you, what were the lessons that 2020 taught to me. A friend of mine, Marvin Agustin, said, "Yes, I am a survivor, and my wife and I carried our young family to the end of the year, and I'm grateful for that and proud of it. Mahirap, but it didn't matter." So for those of you who are not Tagalog speakers, mahirap means it was hard, but it really didn't matter. And Marvin is a perfect example of that. Marvin, just like me, is a fresh immigrant here in the United States. I've seen the challenges that he and his wife had to undergo as they moved into the country. Being an immigrant is already tough enough as it is, but being an immigrant during a pandemic year is definitely made the entire game much more difficult. But I've seen how Marvin and his wife have pivoted themselves, pivoted their business, and now they're helping out other parents through an online community which they call Turo. And Marvin is another example of what it means to be creative amidst the crisis. So thank you very much for this powerful lesson, Marvin. And for all of you guys who are out there, who are watching this video right now, I want you to share in the comments right now, what is the biggest lesson that 2020 taught you? Type it in the chat box right now. And as we are gearing up for a new year, as we're gearing up to finally say goodbye to 2020, yes, goodbye 2020. I don't know about you guys, but if you guys can't wait for 2020 to be over, type it in the chat box. I am so over 2020. If you guys are ready to get rid of 2020, type it in. But let us prepare for 2021 by establishing and getting to know, being aware of what are the things that 2020 has taught us. Because I promise you, it has taught us so many things. Type it in the chat box right now. And on behalf of the entire Unapologetic team, I want to wish you guys all a happy new year in advance. May 2021 be our best year ever. As we enter into a new year, may we enter into it with renewed dreams, with a renewed life, and with a renewed purpose. Have a happy new year, everyone. Thank you very much for being a part of this community, and I look forward to sharing so much stuff with you guys. Let's journey together towards making 2021 a landmark year for each and every one of us. Thank you, guys, and as always, I will see you soon.